iTestify is about testifying of what Jesus Christ has done and can do in each of our lives. Through testimony of people just like you and through study of His Word, our prayer is to encourage each follower of Christ to be a light in this world. So let your light shine before men, that they may see your good works and glorify your Father which is in heaven. Matthew 5:16.
Hello and welcome to iTestify. We're glad to have you with us today. And we have with us two guests today, Taylor and Skyler Spellman. So thanks guys for coming on.
Thanks for having us.
I'm going to turn it over to you to tell us what you came to share with us today.
Right, so we came here today to talk about a ministry that we are a part of called Path of Life. It's a ministry through the Sabbath School Advent Hope of the University Church. We go down to a homeless shelter in Riverside that's called Path of Life, and we spend time with the people there. We do Bible studies with them. We talk with them. Sometimes we have like cooking or singing, things like that, and we just kind of hang out with them and make friends and then share the gospel with them.
That's awesome. I think you guys had a particular passage that has been meaningful for you. Which verse was
Yes, that was found in Matthew 9, 12 and 13.
Okay, Matthew 9, 12 and 13. So if you that are following along with us at home want to look that up, we're going to go to Matthew chapter 9. And I'll go ahead and read that from verses 12 and 13. It says, "When Jesus heard that, he said to them, 'Those who are well have no need of a physician, but those who are sick. But go and learn what this means. I desire mercy and not sacrifice. For I did not come to call the righteous, but sinners to repentance.'" So what is it about that passage that's been meaningful for you guys?
It's been really meaningful because it kind of just tells you to go out there and to go to those that are in need and tell them about the gospel, which is, what we're commissioned to do. Everybody's commissioned to do. And being at the homeless shelter and doing that, this verse has been pretty meaningful, I think, for both of us.
And also, sometimes the homeless, they're kind of the forgotten of our society. And it can be sometimes difficult to deal with people that nobody else really wants to deal with. But those are the exact people that need Jesus. And so God has called us to go to the sick, not to the healthy.
Yeah. And I think, as you guys know, I have some experience there too. And like we see a lot of people that are, sick, some of them physically, mentally suffering with different things. But I think a lot of them are spiritually sick too, and not just people there, but definitely.
Definitely.
And I think also in a society like Loma Linda, you tend to get a little insulated. It's easy. You're on a college campus or very near to one. You're going to school. You're going to grad school. It's a very different environment than what you may find on either side of Loma Linda. One is San Bernardino, and the other is Riverside. And I think Path of Life I couldn't remember, but did you say that Path of Life was in Riverside?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, it's an entirely different culture that's outside of what you are normally dealing with in your everyday life.
Right.
And I just remember when you guys first got involved with Path of Life, and we've talked about it before, and you said, "Oh, we just love it." What is it about Path of Life that you love so much? Why do you connect with it so much?
It's kind of refreshing to be around people that don't really know. I mean, like you said, we're really insulated here in Loma Linda. We're surrounded by lots of people that know the truth, that are very well acquainted with it. And just going there, and there's some people for like the first time where they're hearing it and they're like, "This is amazing. This is like the coolest thing. Like, can you please come back for more?" And that's what makes me really want to go back, is because it's really good to see people that are hungry to keep learning about Jesus.
Something when you read this verse in verse 12 and 13, I think it's interesting when you read why he even said this in the first place. When you read verse 11, he says, "And when the Pharisees saw it, they said unto his disciples, 'Why eateth your master with publicans and sinners?'" When they saw it, he was sitting down and eating with publicans and sinners. And this is revolutionary to them. These are the outcasts of society, and Jesus is having dinner with them. And that's a question that everyone's asking. Why is he doing this? And we nowadays become more accustomed to this idea of humanitarian work and helping others who are in need, but the spiritual component is still left out. Why are you so encouraged by sharing the spiritual aspect with those who have never heard it before? And it's because you see their lives changed.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Do you have any stories about anyone's life who's been changed by?
Yeah, absolutely. We have one particular story. And actually, I wonder if we could read our next scripture in 1 John chapter 3 to kind of introduce this. Chapter 3, verse 18.
Sure. I'll read that for you guys. 1 John chapter 3, verse 18. I'll find it really quick, sorry. 1 John chapter 3, verse 18. My little children, let us not love in word, neither in tongue, but in deed and in truth.
Right. So I think what the story that we're going to introduce here is a man we met named Reggie at the shelter, and a very nice man. When we came to him, actually, we came and we asked if he would like a Bible study, and he said no, he didn't want one. And so there were no one else to do Bible studies with at the time. We had a big group there, and so we just said, well, do you mind if we just sit and talk with you? And he said, sure. And so we sat and we talked with him, and after a while, we mentioned what church we go to, and we offered, if you ever want to go, we can take you. And he said, well, sure, I'd like that. And from there, it started a relationship. Mm-hmm. And we started to bring him to church. We would bring him home after church and hang out with him. We'd bring him to the potlucks, right? And we really grew in friendship with him.
So he didn't want Bible study.
And he didn't want Bible study.
But he wanted to come to church.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I think he wanted some of that community, so maybe he was just looking. Mm-hmm. And really, what we just read, let us not love in word or in tongue, right? Sometimes people don't want to hear the gospel. They're not interested in what you have to say. Mm. But as we love them in deed and in truth, right? And they see the love of Christ in us, then they're more interested in what you have to say. Mm. Eventually, we started Bible studies with him. We studied prophecy with him. Mm-hmm. And he was very excited about it at that point because he knew us and we were his friends. Mm-hmm. And we cared for him, and he knew that. So that's just one of the amazing things that can happen with a ministry like this.
Mm-hmm. I'd also like to read the verse before, because I think that also speaks to what you just said. So verse 17, 1 John 3:17 says, but whoso hath this world's good, and seeth his brother have need, and shutteth up his bowels of compassion from him, how dwelleth the love of God in him? And so it just speaks more to what you were saying is, and I think it also speaks to the previous verse that we were reading in Matthew 9, is what Reed was mentioning. It's supping with them. Mm-hmm. That's a very personal deed.
Right.
It's not just, okay, well, I have an hour, I'm going to give you my study, and then I'm going to go. It was, you sat down and you chatted with him. Mm-hmm. I find that so profound. I know it's so simple, it may not seem like a big deal, but just that you saw that the study wasn't what he needed. Mm-hmm. The compassion or the friendship was what he needed. The sitting down and becoming friends. And the thing is that takes a long time. Mm-hmm. It takes more than an hour of your time. You guys were driving early in the morning on Sabbath morning, every Sabbath, to and fro. It takes a lot of commitment. So,
I also think it's so important what you guys were talking about, just spending the time, as we're mentioning, because I think about myself, and there's so many times when, if I wasn't convicted on a certain subject, I had to keep going over it with someone, or sometimes we go in circles around something that I didn't want to learn about or something like that, and that person or those people took all of that time and effort to go through it, and however long it took me, they were there, and so I think it's something that we owe to the next person.
Yeah,
That if we took that time to be shown the truth and we struggled, then we should take that time with others to show them as well. So, yeah, I appreciate that.
And I can kind of relate personally to, a little bit. I wasn't in a homeless shelter where I was having people come visit me, but But I can say that when I was kind of studying into the truth, I had kind of a dysfunctional family. I think we all do in one way or another. Maybe some of us are more blessed. But I have really appreciated the opportunity to be able to go to my friend's house who was the Seventh-day Adventist. And his family was very welcoming. And they invite me over for dinners and the Friday night and for lunch on Sabbath. And this invitation, this friendly circle where I felt welcomed, and just it made me feel like I was part of a family. Now, a Path of Life isn't that smaller, intimate type of environment, but I think having regular people come in and just want to spend time with them and make them feel like what normalcy is, kind of takes their mind away from a lot of the problems in their own life. And it's like a touch of what the gospel is supposed to do, which is make someone feel whole or normal. And so you guys are interacting with people to make them feel normal, and showing them that you love them even though you don't actually want anything from them. Like, it's just very cool.
Yeah, and we hear that a lot, actually. Like, when we go in and do the Bible study afterwards, like, a lot of people will be like, thank you so much. It means so much that you came in. Like, it's so crazy in here, and it's nice to just have a Bible study and have people that want to talk about the Word, and instead of like all the craziness that goes on there every day. So they really appreciate it too. Like, more than anybody I've ever seen appreciate a Bible study is them would be the most, for sure.
And living in a homeless shelter isn't easy. There's a lot of hectic things going on in the shelter all the time. And so they have to deal with that, all week. Whereas we get to leave and we just visit.
Yeah.
They're there. And so it's nice that they have the shelter, but it also can have its own issues. And so to have people come in and definitely spend time with you and make you feel like, okay, there is some normalcy in the world.
Do you have any more details about how the shelter works? Maybe some people might run into someone on the streets and think, oh, this might be a good place to refer them to. Do you have any idea, like, how long are they able to stay? Are there any requirements? Any kind of details that might be helpful?
I think a requirement is that they have to be drug-free. Like, they're not allowed to go in there unless they like clear drug tests and stuff. And I want to say that the amount of time is just down to like months. I'm not sure if it's any longer than that.
Yeah, it's a shelter built to get people back on their feet, and so they kick you out in the morning basically to have you go get jobs, and they help you with that and everything, or education, whatever it is your plans are. And so it's not a long-term stay.
Transitional, so you can get back on your feet. Oh, excellent.
Yeah.
And so, when you had that time with Reggie, how long were you able to spend with him?
Oh man, it was months. Like, it was a while. But there was a point where he did not live at the shelter anymore, where he was able to go live in like an apartment or like a house with a couple other people. So even when he got back on his feet, he still wanted to hang out with us and stuff. But I'd say a majority of the time we were driving to the shelter to go get him, and then he'd come with us to church, spend basically the whole day with us, and then we drop him back off.
Yeah, I wanted to bring up another aspect for me and see, what you guys thought about this. For me, every time when I go, I always leave. I can't even think of an exception to this. I always leave feeling a blessing just from the people that were there. I either see somebody who is just really hopeful still, or just so, like you said, appreciative that came for the study, somebody that wants to hear the Word. Some event that happens where I feel like, okay, I'm glad that my time was spent that way and it actually uplifted me. I wonder if you guys have had any, similar experiences like that, or, what your thoughts are about it.
Yeah.
Definitely, Jesus said it's better to give than to receive. And I think this ministry has really showed that to be true for me personally. There are times when I really don't feel like going, to be perfectly honest. You want to enjoy your Sabbath and just relax. But, okay, I have an obligation, I go. And I always come away thinking, wow, that was so great. I'm so happy I went.
Yeah, we were just talking about that last week, because it's like all the time where you're like, I really just don't feel like I want to go. But when you feel like that, you have to go, because it's like Satan's like saying, oh, you don't want to go. It's such a trouble to drive there, and it's so long. But there hasn't been one time where we've come out of there and felt like, nothing really came out of that. It's every time where we're like excited because somebody got excited with us about the Bible and about Jesus.
And that doesn't mean there's no struggles doing the ministry. Of course, there's going to be some people that that are combative and stuff like that. Not physically. but they want, they want to argue with you about things, and that happens. But even then, there's still others that they are really thankful, always, every single time. So even when there are some less smooth people, then you still have some good thing come out of it.
You know, and sometimes that I've seen when some people are more aggressive like that, I've had people afterwards thank us, the people that came to share, like, you know, wow, that was really nice how you like dealt with that person, because they see them in the shelter all the time and they know that this person is kind of difficult, you know, and so they're appreciative. They're like, oh, that was, you know, because we're so kind to them, and you know.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, you've been there.
You guys mentioned that you go to the shelter on the Sabbath. Do you feel like there's a particular special experience that you have by going on the Sabbath rather than any other day?
Yeah. I think that us being there on Sabbath and we're doing Bible studies, they'll always ask, like, why are you here on Saturday? Like, what church are you part of? And you're like, well, we're part of the Seventh-day Adventist church. So even just that, just the fact that we show up on Saturday makes people question why we're there on Saturday. So that's always in itself a good opportunity to tell them.
And I think there's something special about the sacred hours that just, I don't know, it just gives you a bigger blessing in whatever you're doing. And so I think that also adds to it as well.
You spoke before about how each time you go down there, it is a blessing, as though basically you prayed for a divine appointment. I know that prayer is also really important for all the leaders that go down there. And I just remember, and I wanted to share this with our viewers, I remember I was there one Sabbath when you guys were there as well. And then I was done with the study that I was doing, but you guys were still talking with someone, and I remember I was standing at the wall, and I remember, Taylor, there was a man, and you were sitting across the table from him, and he was just clutching onto your hand, and he was just saying something to you, but you let him hold your hand. Not that, but it was just the fact of that he really, I just noticed that he was really clutching onto your hand and speaking very earnestly to you, and you were just listening to him. And Skyler, you were behind her listening as well. And it was super significant to me, just that picture. I always have it in my head that we don't only come to teach, but we also go there to listen to them. And it's some kind of cathartic therapy, just to have someone there who is not maybe so focused on the issues that I myself am having, but I'm just there to listen to them for a little bit. Do you have other experiences like that you can tell us about, or the significance of just praying with them?
There was a time recently when the shelter was so full that we didn't have anywhere to sit, and so we couldn't do Bible study. And so we just went around to each table and asked people if they wanted us to pray for them for anything. And they were always like super appreciative, and there were always people that wanted to continue talking because they crave for lack of better words, normal attention and normal conversation, I guess. And for you to give that to them means a lot to them. They're like, I just want to have a normal conversation with somebody and somebody to pray for my needs. And so there's been a few experiences like that where they're just so happy that someone's just going to pray for them.
And I remember that day, actually, as we were going around, there was an older gentleman who asked me, because he saw that I was carrying a Bible. He's like, oh, what Bible is that? So I told him. And he was like, he wanted to start talking to me about different Bible translations and where they come from and everything. And I could tell he just wanted someone to talk to, and he knew a little bit about this subject. And so he thought, well, I can talk to you about this. And so it was just nice for him to have a normal conversation where, in a place like that, they don't get a lot of people who really care about their, where they're coming from and all that. So it's just nice for them to have someone to talk to and pray with. And we always end every session with prayer requests, which we try to write down and pray for through the week. Yeah.
You mentioned you also have, besides Bible studies, you also have more like teaching opportunities for cooking classes, you have dentistry. Who do you get to come out and do that, and what kind of participation do they get to have, or do you give samples of food, or?
It's been a while since we've had somebody come out and do a demonstration, but we always appreciate it when it happens because the people at the shelter really enjoy it and they like learning about it and obviously getting like free samples and stuff. I think there was someone that came and played like violin, or a couple people that did.
It was a family.
Yeah, and they loved it. Like they really liked it a
Yeah.
lot. And I wish that we could have people like that come out and do that again, because I think they really appreciated just the music in general. And like all like the older like ladies were like oohing and awing over like the cute kids playing the violin and stuff. And it's just like a break from obviously just the shelter in itself. And if we could have more people come out and do demonstrations, that would be really cool.
What are some needs that the shelter would have? Like, cooking classes would be good. Music, you wouldn't even think of that, but that's a great fulfillment of something that really, when Saul was having these disturbances in his heart, that's something that calmed him, that Dave was able to calm him down with. So
Yeah.
you don't think about the power of music, but what are some other aspects that could be useful?
Like we said, we had like some cooking demonstrations, real short ones that we would give samples out, which of course everyone likes food, so that's always a popular one. But anything else, we're definitely open to ideas, anything creative. You mentioned like maybe something dental or something like that. Just little things that can help them, teach them, because they're kind of at a place where they're just trying to survive, and some of these things can kind of be helpful reminders to them to help them be more healthy, and even when they're on the street or in the shelter.
And there was, when you're talking about music, it made me remember that usually at the shelter, I believe there's a television on that seems to be on all the time. But when the music comes in, when we had those demonstrations come in, they would obviously shut off the television all the way, not just the volume, but all the way. And people would come out, and from the way the shelter is set up, there's a men's dorm and a women's dorm, and then a common place in the middle. And we would be, all of us who would go, we would be studying in the common room, as well as all the demonstrations would be in the common room as well. And I just remember when we had the violinist come, and I remember we had a whole keyboard come in, and just to set that up, the commitment that this ministry has had to it with the volunteers is a blessing to see, to watch, and be a part of. And we set up all the music, and people would come out of their dorms when they heard the music, because it was a difference. Like we've been saying, there's something about bringing a Christian environment, and just the Sabbath. So I believe the music would be hymns, sacred music, and there's something about bringing the environment outside of the environment that you have to this environment that isn't used to having this setup. That's different from, say, bringing someone to church, and they both have their different blessings. But it certainly was profound to me when you would lift up this little, microcosm of church, and you bring it over to them.
And like you said, it can really bring a difference just to their whole environment. Definitely, you're bringing that light that Jesus has given you into a dark place, and they notice it. They definitely notice it.
And I think, sometimes when you first go by and you're asking people, do you want to do a Bible study today? Sometimes they're kind of hesitant. Sometimes they almost even say no, but by the time you get your group together, they'll end up coming over and listening. But that's where it really helps, when we do have people kind enough to come out and do music, because it gets people's minds already thinking about it for a few minutes and gets them in more of a spiritual atmosphere. And so then when you start having study, I think it helps the turnout. I think it really does.
Definitely a good point.
So we've been blessed when we've had people come out and do that.
Path of Life also has another aspect that's useful, and you deal primarily with the adult shelter, which is everyone who's over the age of 18 who's single or married. But if they have children, they have another shelter that they can go to for families. So it's another way to reach out to a different kind of environment. Have you been to the children's shelter as well, just to kind of compare?
I've been there a couple times because I had a friend that was interested in doing it and like teaching, so I would go there when she would go. And the children were like super into like the activities and stuff. Like if there's like coloring or like making something or crafts, that was great. And then like the moms were like mostly just really relieved of their children like for a while. And they really appreciated that too. So even if they weren't going to come over and like watch what the kids were doing, they were just excited that their kids were off doing something and other people were kind of taking care of them. And even so, just teaching them about Jesus. So their kids are off, they're learning about something great, and they get a break. So it was cool to watch the parents just kind of be like, sit there and relax, and the kids to be excited about learning about Jesus and doing their little crafts. But I've only been there, I think, like just twice, maybe 3 times.
And for the family shelter, actually, just to mention, I believe we also do some special holiday gifts so that during these days, right, when everyone else is with their families, and you think, well, I want to be with my family too. But there's something about, like what Skyler, you were saying, how even when you don't want to go, it's like you have to remember them. You have some type of commitment. And so on those big holidays, I know that all of us have gone down and delivered gifts to both of those shelters. And I think it's something to be said. We've been talking about this Christ method, how he mingled with them, and how this is what he came for, like what your verses said. He came for the sinners, came for those who were sick, came for those in need. Now, I know my family doesn't need the same way that these people at Path of Life need. I mean, there's such a stark difference. And just the ability, your ministry can be, thousands upon thousands of miles away, or it could be just next door. And just to find a culture that is so different from you just next door, and to see the stark need and the difference, I think is super powerful.
And it's definitely one of those things where if you just put yourself in their shoes, right, and think, what would you want if you were in their situation, It makes that sacrifice a little bit easier to make. And again, you come away with a blessing, so it's not really a sacrifice in the end.
Is there anything that you guys want to say to encourage others to come out and volunteer their time?
Yeah, actually, our last verse, Matthew 9:37 and 38. Someone
I'll
would like
read
to read
that
that.
for you guys too. Matthew chapter 9, verse 37 and 38 says, Then saith he unto his disciples, The harvest truly is plenteous, but the laborers are few. Pray ye therefore the Lord of the harvest, that he will send forth laborers into his harvest.
So our plea is just, we need people to come out and help. There are so many people that are willing to hear the gospel and that need it. And there's so many people that want to get involved. Well, this is the perfect place. And there's plenty of people that would love to hear you and love to have your help.
Thank you guys so much for coming. It's been a blessing, and I've been inspired watching you guys in this ministry. Again, I just want to quickly read the verse before. Matthew 9:36, but when he saw the multitudes, he was moved with compassion on them, because they fainted and were scattered abroad as sheep having no shepherd. But we have a shepherd, and it's Jesus Christ. And we ask that you share your light with others and share Jesus with others. Thanks for watching.